Hi and welcome or welcome back. In my previous video I showed you how I painted these two landscapes in oil pastels, which is a new medium for me. After I was done with these, I really wanted to try some portraits in oil pastels, and that was quite an adventure. I thought I'd use some of the paper that I already own, and surely something would work with these. The paper that I'm using here is this Ingres Pastel paper by Hahnemühle, which I bought ages ago because the horse in the example picture looked so pretty. But then I never painted on it, so this was my first time using this paper. But it said pastel on it, right? I quickly realized that this is probably intended for soft pastels and not oil pastels, because I kept applying more and more of the oil pastels, but I didn't really get any coverage out of them. And it felt as if I was just making no progress whatsoever, and I needed at least 10 layers to get anywhere. The pastels also didn't want to smudge when I used my fingers, which had worked really well with my previous attempts. So here's a bit of real-time footage of trying in vain to really get these to blend and look nice. The oil pastels wouldn't move unless I already had applied several layers underneath them, which they could blend into, but anytime they were just sitting on paper, they wouldn't budge. And I really disliked how many white spots were still showing through. In the end, I decided to abandon this particular paper and try it again on a different one. But before I continue, I want to show you my reference image from Pinterest and be completely transparent that I traced this one for this painting. I know the tracing is very controversial and a lot of artists consider it to be cheating, and I usually avoid it as well. So why did I do it here? The reason is this YouTuber and artist here called Alpay. I've been watching his channel for a while and he discusses a lot of points regarding art. And one thing he mentioned, I'm afraid I don't know which video it was, but he mentioned that drawing and painting are two separate kinds of skills. And it is okay to use tracing. In fact, he uses it as well if you are building your painting skills with it. With every painting, you are practicing your color mixing, your technique with this medium. I have a drawing sketchbook and I still have many things that I want to practice when drawing people. So using tracing is probably not something I would do regularly. But in this case, I allowed myself to do so that I could intentionally practice working with these oil pastels. In hindsight, I am relieved I did so in this case because I ended up drawing this person 3 times before I found the right paper to work with. And I'm happy I didn't have to start drawing her from scratch every single time. I'm pretty sure that would have made me give up very soon. So here I am on attempt number 2. This is Hahnemühle's bamboo mixed media paper. And I usually have good experiences working on this paper. And it certainly went a bit better, but I still didn't like how these pastels looked on this paper. I will show you a close-up now. They looked really splotchy, and a lot of times I could see random blobs of oil pastel from underneath shimmering through, and it just looked really dirty. I didn't like it. Thankfully, we don't need to create art in isolation, and we can learn from other artists who are using these media. So I asked Yolanda, who has a really successful YouTube channel and paints these absolutely wonderful oil pastels, which kind of paper she uses to achieve these results. And she recommended this Pastelmat paper to me. So I ordered it online and this was a revelation. This is the paper here, Clairefontaine's Pastelmat. This is the weirdest paper that I've ever seen. It looks a bit like drywall or sandpaper. Feels kind of rough as well, but not exactly unpleasant. At the same time, I would not recommend to draw on this paper. You will probably want to do a sketch on a different piece of paper and then use some graphite transfer paper or light box to transfer it onto this paper. Drawing just looks really rough on it and it doesn't erase too well. But this paper really makes a difference. I could get much better coverage with just one application of oil pastels, and with a second oil pastel I could immediately start blending. And this just saves so much time and makes everything a good bunch faster than having to apply 10 layers or something like on the Ingres paper. That being said, a lot of the challenges of working with oil pastels still remain, mostly in how to create details. I believe Yolanda actually works on a free size to help with this and just give herself more space. I was able to use a dark sepia pastel pencil to achieve some details and sharp lines, but the edges of her face are kind of fuzzy. I tried a different camera angle here and putting this on a table easel so that you can see as many details as possible. Lately I've been feeling a bit self-conscious about my lack of interesting camera angles for my YouTube channel, so I wanted to try something new here. And like I mentioned, the pastel pencil actually worked quite well here, especially if there is no oil pastel underneath it. I also have a blender pencil that is very interesting because you can sort of scrape the top layer of the oil pastels off with it and sort of get back to the layer that was underneath it. And this was quite helpful for a couple of finer details until the pencil rolled off my desk, fell onto the floor and shattered into several pieces. I've taped it back together, but I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to sharpen it in the future once I get to the taped section. So that was a bit of a bummer. I'm also going to need to figure out how to sharpen these oil pastels because most of them wore down to a relatively round tip. To get some of the finer details, I also tried a technique where you use the paper stump to scrape off a bit of paint from the oil pastel and then dab it onto the paper. I didn't record all of my process here, so there'll be a short jump here when her hair is suddenly finished. To achieve this look, I basically just dabbed down with my pastels onto the paper, and it worked okay, I would say. It still looks like someone painted her hair who doesn't know what she's doing, and that is absolutely correct. I have no idea. But I also don't want to limit myself only to things that I already know how to draw or paint. So that was an interesting challenge. I also found the flowers in her hair surprisingly difficult to do. I felt like I didn't quite have the right colors and I just lacked precision on such a small area. So these turned out a bit more like impressionist flowers than realistic flowers. So here we are. I think it's not bad for my first oil pastel portrait, even though there's still lots of things I want to work on and improve for the future. But I'm quite happy with this, and I'm just really glad I finally found the right paper where these work well. I was a bit burned out after this though, so my next portraits that you will see are in gouache and watercolors. If you've tried using oil pastels for portraits as well, I would love to hear your experiences. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye.